This is Trevor Juenger, writer and director of The Man in Room 6, and you are listening to The Movie Raid.
It's time for The Movie Raid, and tonight's victim is director and editor Trevor Juenger, that has done The Man in Room 6, Coyote, amongst others. Hello.
Hello. How are you, Mike?
Fantastic, man. If you are allowed to tell us a little bit about The Man in Room 6, I know this involves Bill Oberst Jr.
Yeah, Bill Oberst is in it. I don't want to give away too much in terms of the plot, but you go on IMDb, it says something about a girl in a nursing home discovers an old man, claims to be immortal, and he tells her all these stories about how he got that way and how he's cursed and stuff. It goes for a few twists and turns that I guarantee you will not see coming. And I don't want to tell you about that stuff, but if you watch it, you'll find out.
Fantastic. So has this been in circulation on festivals or any other type of like teaser streaming areas or anything like that? Or are you just basically been keeping quiet with this until up until more recent?
As a filmmaker that is a DIY person, that's what we call it, right? Like you say indie filmmaker, and then that sort of elicits visions of, you know, Quentin Tarantino and stuff, who has $1 million or more to make a film. But we do things in the $1,000 range, you know, so we're much slower than like a studio in terms of getting our picture out to you. So we've done like regional theatrical stuff. So if you're in like the Missouri area, you had a chance to see it at like a drive-in. You could see it in St. Louis City. You could see it Illinois in the St. Louis metro area and stuff. And then we've done one festival that was a regional festival again in St. Louis, and then we have another one coming up in a couple of days out in Arizona. But we're really tough for a film festival to handle because we have like a long film. It's kind of like the equivalent of watching like a double feature all at once, right? Like it's a 2.5 hour long film, but it's also kind of like split into chapters. So it's really easy for you to go, okay, I'm going to watch a portion of this and then I'm going to go do something. I'm going to come back to it, right? Like those longer form films. But a film festival does not like that very much because they want to get as many films in as possible. So any festival that wants to run us has to like kind of commit. You have 3 nights, and one of those nights we're going to give just to this movie, basically. It's been not a ton of festivals this time around. When we shot Coyote, that was 1 hour and 15 minutes, so much easier to program, and we did like more than 30 festivals all over the world and stuff. Really easy for those festivals to handle us at that point, but we screen wherever we can. I like to see the film in an actual theater. I feel like that's where it was intended to be seen. Eventually we'll be on streaming, and I think we'll have physical media on October 1st, barring any unforeseen catastrophes.
Now, you mentioned about budget. What is really the best budget for you that actually would work for other filmmakers? Or does this mainly work for you on the content that you make, between $1,000? What's a rounded estimate do you think is really a good way to start out with?
I think it really depends. Coyote we shot in a month, and we shot it for like $8,000, right? Like it was whatever we could kind of scrape together to shoot all the stuff all at once. I shot a pilot for approximately the same amount of money, and that was shot in like 7 days. So you could pay people a little bit more over a 7-day period than over a 30-day period, and you could do a little bit more with that money in a short period of time. But it's a shorter project at the end of the day, right? You don't have a feature film. Instead, you have this 30-minute long thing that's pretty hard for people to actually commit to seeing. But in this case, we're way up there. Like we're in the double-digit thousands and closer to 100,000 than 10,000, right? There's no way that we could have raised that on our own to do all at once, but instead we shot in blocks, which is something that a lot of filmmakers do, and it's really tough to pull off, right, in terms of continuity. So like say I'm going to shoot weekends over the course of a year. People's hair changes, people change physically and stuff. Some people move away. That's kind of the trouble with block shooting. But we knew we were going to block shoot, and that was our adversity through the script, right? We knew that was going to be some trouble for us, so we kind of approached this like a horror omnibus or a horror anthology, but a little bit more like connected, right? So it's not exactly a horror anthology, it's not exactly a horror omnibus. Instead, it's got very clear, distinct chapters. Okay, we can shoot this location with these characters in a single weekend, and we can raise a few $1,000s to do that. And then we can shoot a big chunk over the summer. I think we shot 14 days straight, but it's going to cost us more money, so we're going to crowdfund to get that part done. And eventually you pool all that money together and you go, holy crap, I spent more money on this than I have combined all of my other films, but it was only possible by spending a little bit at a time. I think we shot this over like 3 years, so it took quite a bit of time to get there.
Does the style of genre affect an indie artist based on the view of that content, or how it's even budgeted with it, or what some of the quality features with it? Does it actually affect you per se?
Yeah, I think that the genre matters a lot. I think that with horror, you can get away with no-name actors and stuff because people just like horror. People are going to watch that. If you have a spooky cover, people are going to give it a chance. Whereas like a dramatic thing or even a comedy thing, like if people see it's just two actors' faces, that's what your selling point is. Because at the end of the day, it's just an image. Somebody has to click on that or click buy to get that on a DVD and stuff. So horror gives you a lot more latitude and a lot more freedom. And also, like horror is a lot better for filmmakers with fewer resources because people are expecting at this point to see horror movies that kind of show the production quality or the production element. Whereas a dramatic piece, you want everything to be kind of invisible, right? Like you don't want to be looking at the cinematography for it, and you don't want to look at the flashy editing and stuff. Anything like that is jarring and pulls you out of the moment. But with horror, it's cool, like that's interesting for people, and like that's where a lot of like indie filmmakers, like that's their film school, right? They can't go to a weird liberal arts school and learn cinematography. Instead, they're picking up all these DVDs and stuff and trying to watch for things and watch for some specific things, and maybe this cool camera movement that you didn't expect. Maybe Sam Raimi hooks a camera to a motorcycle and runs it through a cabin and stuff, and it inspires you, and you're going to throw your camera on your bike and go down the street that way. For decades now, horror has allowed people to be more experimental in terms of production elements, and that's only helpful for low-budget people to just be able to be creative and do things a little bit differently.
Do you feel like it's a little bit more expressive in horror, or do you feel it's almost compressed in today's society of horror and filmmaking?
I think it's expected. I think that if you don't do those things, I'm not sure what people would think, honestly. I think that if I open up an indie horror movie and no one's trying anything different or trying to do something interesting, I think that I kind of tune out. Though I think horror inspires a lot of people to do things that are cool because you're allowed to. I think that it's something that indie filmmakers are really attracted to as artists because they have the ability to express themselves that way. I think a lot of people that are jumping into making films for the first time are very attracted to the genre of horror. Maybe sci-fi too, but sci-fi is just really hard to pull off in terms of production design. Most sci-fi movies take place in some setting that's really hard to pull off. You can't just go into the woods. In a horror movie, you can absolutely shoot the whole thing in the woods and it makes total sense to be there, so long as you're doing something creative with either the camera or the performance or the special effects. People will find some sort of appreciation for it. But if you're just trying to copy and emulate other people and do it with less money and less effort, I don't think that you'll be very successful in it.
And unfortunately, there are a lot of films today that are doing that. There's a market for everything. There really is, and there always will be. But at the same time, like you really can't completely express yourself. You're only given a pinch of what you want out of film, but actually having to get more content out there, not just, this is for fun, treating it as a hobby. And that's a dirty word in terms of filmmaking. If you want to just, it's a hobby because of the quality and the content of how less of money was put into it and all this stuff. You have to get it out there, and you have to really push forward to what you're trying to do in terms of visual aid.
Yeah, for sure. I think that the worst compliment that you can ever get as like an indie filmmaker is to hear, that looked like a real movie. Because like it's backhanded, right? Because they're saying like, well, it wasn't a real movie, but it looked like one, so good job. And it always hits a little bit weird like that stuff. But yeah, there's always going to be some level of compromise, right? Like you can't do absolutely everything that you want. But I think that that's helpful in a way too, because you get to see people create art through adversity, people shooting stuff with cell phones. I've seen some really cool stuff done with cell phones that couldn't be done otherwise, right? Like cell phones, they have this wide angle lens to them. You can get in tight areas that you couldn't get with these big, huge honking cameras, big, long lenses and stuff. Instead, you have this more like kind of kinetic thing. You throw your iPhone on a gimbal and you run around with it and stuff. And if you know how that stuff works, if that camera is kind of an extension of you, if this is your life, if it's not a hobby, right? If it's your art and you treat it as such and it's that important to you, you will get good enough at it. And not enough people are doing things with limited assets or limited budgets, I guess, or limited resources. But if they are, if that's you and you're working with these resources that nobody else is working with and stuff, that gives you a unique perspective. That gives you a unique aesthetic, and that makes your film different than everybody else's. And that's what everybody's looking for, right? They're like, I've seen this a million times. I want to see something new and different and authentic. And if you're that person, then you've superseded all of the people that are trying to do things exactly like other people are trying to emulate the big budget film.
Now, you yourself have quite a bit of experience between doing the editing process of films for television and feature films and so forth. Does this give you a better angle and perception to view your future works, developing story, or anything related to that?
I've become an editor out of necessity because, like, no one else is going to edit my stuff for free. I'll edit my stuff for free for sure. And I like teach editing classes now, and almost anyone else who teaches an editing class says, like, don't be the director and the editor at the same time, right? Because you can't see your own work as well as people with an outside perspective. To have those outside perspectives is really important when you're too close to something. You know, like, you did 70 takes to get this perfect tracking shot. Chances are you're going to be really reluctant to cut that tracking shot for pace, right? So that becomes troublesome for a lot of people, but I feel like I'm kind of on the other side of that. And if you spend enough time with your project and stuff, you gain this separation where it feels like this older version of yourself is the one who went out and filmed this thing, right? Like, you're no longer that person anymore. You're no longer that artist. Instead, you're looking at this more objectively, and you can actually cut this thing up in the best possible way that suits the story the best and stuff. Yeah, I think that it's helpful to look at your mistakes over and over again, though. I think that is the big benefit of editing your own work, that your nose is kind of rubbed in the shit. You know what I mean? Like, and you have to do it over and over again and see, like, I fucked this up. And I have to keep it because it makes sense for the story. It's the only way to work it. Maybe if I cut it a different way, maybe it works a little bit better and stuff. But you absolutely learned your mistake, because the next time you go out, you shoot something similar, you're not going to make that mistake again, because you're not going to hurt yourself so badly in the editing room. So I think in that way, it is really helpful to be an editor of your own work. But yeah, it's definitely something that's a learned thing. Like, when you first start, you're way, way too close to your work. So if you can get over that hurdle, then I do think that there's a huge benefit to it.
Now, getting the right caliber of cast within your films, especially when you're starting a project, getting the right caliber of cast, is it more of a challenge to match that caliber between the artist and the director, or do you think that's more of a vice versa?
I think that your cast does a lot of the work for you as a director. Like, if you have the right people and the right places, this film in particular, it's weird because, like, every project's different. So, like, that pilot that I was talking about that we shot, we had 2 weeks of rehearsal up until the time and a week of shooting. So everybody was, like, ready to go. The performances didn't change take to take and stuff. And this film, even though it's shot over the course of 2 or 3 years, we were worried about just timing and being able to get everything. But otherwise, we were kind of rehearsing in the moment right before we were able to shoot and stuff. At that point, it's really, really important to have people that you trust and that you know are going to be good and that will study and bring the character that needs to be brought and also listen and react, you know, and they're not over rehearsed with someone who's not the actor. They do a ton of the directing for you. And then at that point, all you have to do is kind of block everything and say, oh, you need to be standing here when you deliver this part of your line, and here's where the camera's going to be, and you're in a close-up now, so bring down this performance just a little bit to match the composition and stuff, or we're in a wide shot so you have a little bit more latitude need. But yeah, like those horror veterans that I was working with, it feels so good to have them on set and just to have that anxiety out of your mind, right? There's so many things that are going on. Like, is this going to work? Is the special effect going to go off without a hitch? Are we going to be able to get the coverage that we need to finish the scene and stuff? All these things are little anxieties in your brain the entire time you're filming and stuff. And if you go, oh, I don't have to worry about this performance, it's going to be awesome because they're awesome. Oh man, what a relief that can be for you.
Go ahead and plug in any websites or anything that you care to add to this.
Yeah, so if you go to themanroom6.com, you'll see a little teaser. I don't know when this is going to come out, Mike, but if you're in Arizona on October the 2nd, the film is screening as part of the Horror Origins Film Festival. And then on October 1st, you'll be able to go to manroom6.com. You can spell that out, or you can just use the number 6, and you'll see a little web store where you can buy the film on DVD and Blu-ray and stuff.
Very cool, man. There you have it, everybody. That is Trevor Juenger.